Good morning, I'm Taylor Wilson, and today is Wednesday, March 26th, 2025. This is the Excerpt. Today, a look at the response to a report that plans for U.S. airstrikes were discussed in a group chat on the messaging platform Signal. Plus, Russia and Ukraine agreed to a sea and energy truce, and how the return to the office has been chaotic for some federal workers. Democratic lawmakers grilled top Trump administration officials yesterday amid fallout from a report that secret plans for U.S. airstrikes were discussed in a group chat on the encrypted messaging platform Signal that included a journalist. Editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg, reported Monday that he had been added accidentally to the chat titled Houthi PC Small Group ahead of a U.S. attack on Iran-backed Houthi sites in Yemen on March 15th. I caught up with USA Today Congress reporter Savannah Kuchar to get a sense of how this landed on Capitol Hill this week. Hello, Savannah.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for hopping on. Busy week. How did Democrats specifically go after this administration yesterday over this breach?
There's been a variety of responses and Democrats looking for answers. As my colleague Tom Vandenbroek reported, some top Democrats in the House sent a letter asking questions about what happened. And then over on the Senate side, there was a hearing by the Senate Intelligence Committee. It was already scheduled and just so happened to follow the Atlantic's report and featured Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard and CIA Director John Radcliffe, two of the people who were reportedly in that group chat. And so they had a lot of questions from Democrats looking for answers about why this group chat existed, how a journalist was inadvertently added, and particularly whether or not that they believed classified information was shared on this platform. And they repeatedly denied that. And so Democrats were asking then to see transcripts of these texts.
So on that point, I mean, we've heard a lot about the dangers of potentially classified information here. Savannah, what did officials say specifically yesterday about whether there was classified or dangerous national security information in this Signal chat?
That is the question. In Tuesday's Senate hearing, Tulsi Gabbard and John Radcliffe said repeatedly they were not aware of classified material being shared. Whether that means they don't believe it was classified or they don't recall remains to be seen. But right now, that is something that's still trying to be determined.
And we know that Republican lawmakers are promising an investigation. Savannah, what's the latest on that and what will that entail?
What it will entail remains to be seen. But what we do know is, again, at that Tuesday Senate hearing, another witness who was there was FBI Director Kash Patel, who said in response to questions of whether there will be an investigation, he said he has been briefed on the matter Monday evening and Tuesday morning. So we'll see what comes of that. And also in one of her answers, Tulsi Gabbard told senators that she didn't want to go into specifics about what happened because the matter is currently under review by the National Security Council.
So as for President Donald Trump, what are we hearing from him this week? How is he approaching this news?
Definitely, we were waiting to see how the president would respond, whether coming to, his top officials' defense or whether he would be demanding resignations or some other punishment. So far, he seems to be backing his people. In an interview with NBC News Tuesday, Trump said Michael Waltz, who is the national security advisor, quote, Michael Waltz has learned a lesson and he's a good man. So at least for now, it seems, like I said, is standing behind his officials.
All right. Don't think this will be the last that we'll hear from this story. Savannah Kuchar covers Congress for USA Today. Thank you, Savannah.
Thank you, Taylor.
National Security Advisor Mike Waltz told Fox News last night he took full responsibility for inviting a reporter onto the Signal app chat of Trump administration officials discussing plans for a looming military strike on the Houthis in Yemen. Waltz said on the Ingram angle, quote, "It's embarrassing. We're going to get to the bottom of it," unquote. You can stay up on all the latest with usatoday.com. The U.S. has reached separate deals with Ukraine and Russia to pause their attacks at sea and against energy targets, and the U.S. agreed to move to lift some sanctions against Russia. The agreements mark the first formal commitments by the two warring nations since the start of the second Trump administration. Trump is pushing for an end to the war in Ukraine, but what some see as a rapid cozying with Moscow has alarmed Kyiv and some leaders across Europe. The deals were reached after talks in Saudi Arabia that followed separate phone calls last week between Trump and Presidents Volodymyr Zelensky and Vladimir Putin. President Donald Trump signed an executive order yesterday that looks to force sweeping changes on how elections are conducted across the nation, including establishing new voter identification requirements to prove U.S. citizenship to vote in federal elections. The order, which is expected to face challenges in court by voting rights groups, comes as Trump continues to push baseless claims of voter fraud to argue the 2020 election was stolen from him. Non-U.S. citizens are already not allowed to vote in federal elections, but under the order, the National Male Voter Registration Form will require that applicants provide either a U.S. passport, a Real ID driver's license, or state-issued card compliant with Real ID standards, or a valid federal or state government-issued photo identification. The order directs states and local election officials to record and verify the documents proving U.S. citizenship and threatens to withhold federal election-related funds from states that do not comply. The directive also instructs Trump's Attorney General Pam Bondi to take all necessary steps to ensure states do not count absentee ballots that arrive after Election Day. You can read more with a link in today's show notes. The return to office for some federal workers has been chaotic. I spoke with USA Today's senior reporter Jessica Gwynn for more. Hello, Jessica.
Hi, Taylor.
So let's just start by talking about this military base you reference in this piece. And what's happening amid an apparently rocky return to work there?
Well, I spoke with a Defense Department employee who went back to work full-time at an Army base in the Midwest and basically walked into mayhem. There are not enough desks or parking spots to go around, so people are working at card tables. They're driving in circles on the base, looking for spots to park and trying to dodge base cops or handing out parking tickets. They have to rely on food trucks showing up because otherwise there's nowhere to get a snack or eat lunch because the cafeteria shut down so long ago. There are no paper towels, no toilet paper, so they have to bring their own. And there are so few people to clean the bathrooms and workspaces that employees are asked to take their garbage home with them at the end of the day. And so, I was curious about this worker and his background. And he told me he's a Trump supporter who voted for him because he appreciated how he looked out for workers during his first term. And so I asked him if he was second guessing his vote now. He said, in my mind, he did a lot of positive for us during those years. I don't know what the hell is going on now.
Wow, strong words. So you spoke with several federal employees from different agencies. Jessica, did their stories about RTO reflect similar challenges?
Their stories were remarkably similar from agency to agency, and whether people were working out of field offices or the main headquarters. Because the federal government unloaded so much office space to cut costs after the pandemic work from home order, there just isn't enough room for everyone. So they're getting in early to jockey for parking spot, desks, chairs, basic supplies. They have to rely on really spotty and overloaded internet connections. They have to go hang out in their cars if they need to discuss sensitive or classified matters out of earshot of their coworkers. Some people are working in supply closets for those reasons. And some of these offices have stood sort of semi-vacant for years, so they have all kinds of sanitation issues. We're talking cockroaches, rats, clogged toilets, busted sinks, overflowing trash cans, and there's just not enough janitorial workers to stay on top of it all. What makes matters a little bit worse for these folks is that the sudden return to office has upended their lives, especially those with children. Many people who were hired as remote workers now face commutes that can stretch hundreds of miles, and some are even shacking up in cheap sublets or couch surfing with friends close to the office during the week. So it's been a pretty dramatic shift for them.
Yeah, I'd imagine. So what is this actually doing, Jessica, to productivity?
Well, people are spending hours commuting to and from work, not to mention, and they can spend another hour parking. One guy told me that's how long it takes him to find parking in a garage and take two shuttles, one from the parking garage to the campus and the other from the entrance of the campus to his office. Once they get into the office, they're dealing with overcrowding, Some people are stacked in conference rooms and have to talk over each other on phone calls and meetings. They're also dealing with broken equipment and generally fairly subpar working conditions. On top of that, because of the cutback, some people are now shouldering the work of several people. None of that makes for a very happy workplace or very happy workers. So I think it's safe to say they're not putting in all those extra hours they used to when they worked part-time or full-time from home, especially after hours.
The Office of Personnel Management, the federal government's human resources division, what do they say about all this?
Well, it's important to note that many federal employees were directed to work part or full time from home during the COVID-19 pandemic. Some remote work arrangements actually began much earlier than that. And after taking office, President Trump ordered federal employees back to the office full time, and that was part of his administration's drive to make government bureaucracy less costly, more efficient, more answerable to the American people. And he and Elon Musk have been pretty clear about what will happen to any federal employees who don't follow this order. Now, I did not hear back from the White House for this story, but the Office of Personnel Management, or OPM, emphasized that the return to office is a priority for the administration. It said that in-person collaboration strengthens productivity, mission delivery, and public service. What was most interesting to me is that OPM also said that it is supporting federal agencies in making necessary improvements to provide a safe and effective work environment. And that includes facility conditions, resource availability, and connectivity. So clearly, the Trump administration is acknowledging the lapses we reported on here and is promising to address them. We will just have to wait and see if they do.
All right, listeners can find the full version of Jessica's story with a link in today's show notes. Jessica Gwynn is a senior reporter with USA Today. Thank you, Jessica.
Thanks so much for having me, Taylor.
Are schools providing the best education for all students? Sociologist and author Eve L. Wing says in her new book, that's true only for some children.
We expect them to go to school and explore and learn and discover their own lives as autonomous beings, but that for Black children and Native children, that the most important thing is that they learn self-control and that they be controlled through surveillance and through a very strict corporal discipline.
My colleague Dana Taylor sat down with Eve to discuss her book, Original Sins, The Miseducation of Black and Native Children and the Construction of American Racism. Hear that conversation right here on The Excerpt today, beginning at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And thanks for listening to The Excerpt. You can get the podcast wherever you get your audio. And if you're on a smart speaker, just ask for The Excerpt. I'm Taylor Wilson, and I'll be back tomorrow with more of The Excerpt from USA Today.